All right. So we got our chat function up, and we have Kristina Payne here with Lane Workforce Partnership. She's the executive director. I am Brittany Quickcorner. I'm the president and CEO at the Eugene Chamber of Commerce, and just want to say thank you all for joining, either via the Zoom call or the folks there on Facebook. It looks like there's a handful of folks here too. We are going to do our best to answer everybody's questions as they come in. I have a handful of questions that got submitted in advance that we'll get started with Kristina answering those. And then if there's something that did not get answered that you are interested in learning more about, please do either put your question in the chat box on the Zoom call or post it on Facebook. And I have staff who's going to be transferring those into the Zoom call so we can make sure we get all those questions documented. We know that this has been an incredibly hard time for a lot of you who are watching, whether you're a staff person who has been recently laid off or is fearful that that could be coming down the line, or you're an employer who is also really, really scared for your business, but also for your employees. All the business owners that we've spoken to in the last week and a half, their biggest concern has been their staff and how they're going to take care of them and what they can do. And this is obviously a really hard time for all of us. I am incredibly fortunate. I know that we are privileged to be able to work from home as a staff. We were luckily set up with the technology to do that. And my staff has been working around the clock just to do whatever we can to support these businesses, to get questions answered, to collect resources. And I know, Kristina, you and your team have been doing the same. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to jump on here and try to answer some questions for folks. I do want to preface, neither Kristina nor I are able to give legal advice. So we strongly encourage you to work with a local workforce attorney, if you do have some questions that you want answered before you make final decisions. But we are able to provide some just general insights to the way the programs and systems are working. And then this Wednesday, we will have 2 workforce attorneys on a webinar to talk more about the federal stimulus packages, some of those options, but also they can answer some questions that might be more appropriate for them to do so. But given that, Kristina is definitely an expert in this area and does this day in and day out, inside and outside of crisis. So I know she's going to be able to answer a lot of questions for folks. Kristina, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you?
Sure. So again, my name is Kristina Payne. I'm the executive director for Lane Workforce Partnership. We are the workforce board for Lane County. There are 9 workforce boards across the state of Oregon. So if you're not coming to us from Lane County and you have questions that relate to another area in Oregon, put that in the chat. We'll direct you to where that workforce board is. As far as some of the information I'm telling you today, when we talk about the overall state of Oregon programs, that applies to anyone sitting anywhere in Oregon. But there are some programs that will be specific to how we are delivering those funds in our region, just because funding changes as you go across the state of Oregon when it comes to workforce development. And I'll point out when there's nuances like that. As far as I have 20 years in workforce development, I worked through the Great Recession, and that was a time that many of us were learning as we went. This reminds me a little bit of that, only it's worse, quite frankly. So as soon as we think we have something figured out, there's a slight change that comes down the pike. So far, it's been good changes, a little more relaxed that we've seen in a lot of areas. But technology has to be programmed in order to keep up with those changes. And I think that's probably what Brittany and I will talk about today. I think there's just a lot of people hearing that one thing is allowed, but systems aren't reflecting that, and that can be confusing. So we can get into what those things might be as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristina, I know you've been kind of in constant communication with folks at the state and at the county level. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the calls that you've been on, the response that you've been seeing from the state before we get into some of the specific questions?
Well, I think Some of the biggest questions we're getting is about what to do if companies are thinking they're going to have to lay off their workforce, and trying to figure out if they're just reducing hours and if there's programs out there. And yes, in Oregon, we have the work share program. And I know those links have gone around. I know, Brittany, you've shared that
The
information.
state. Oh, sorry.
The work share program. So that is something that any employer can look into and apply for on behalf of their employees, and indicate how many hours they're going to be reducing the workload, the work, so that their employees can apply for unemployment insurance to cover the reduction in hours. And that information we can include more links to after this. They've been put out, but we're happy to include them again. The other questions that we're getting a lot of is, well, there's just so many questions, but one of the programs that's new is our layoff aversion program that we've had in place has been expanded. And that is to provide funding to companies in our region in Lane County. It'll be companies of 20 or less employees. And you can apply for the tools to be able to allow your workforce to work from home. So if you weren't already set up, much like Brittany said, how grateful she is to have already been set up to be able to work from home. If that is something that your employees could do, but they just weren't set up that way, you can go to Lane Workforce Partnerships webpage at laneworkforce.org, and right on the homepage is the information on the application itself, which is basically a straight budget saying, here's what it's costing us to set our employees up at home, and here's the total. We're allowing, so 20 or under employees, 20 employees or less, and up to a cap of $5,000 per request. So one of the examples is not just in technology. We have a salon owner who is going to be packaging up her hair color in deliverable containers and allowing her clients to come and pick them up. That is a cost that she is going to experience just as a result of the COVID-19 and not being able to do hair in her salon. So the cost for that, for those materials, she can put in a request for. So just giving some of the things that people are thinking of.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a layoff aversion, essentially. The idea is that it'll help you kind of shift and pivot your workspaces so you can avoid having to lay folks off. We'll get into a few more of those programs. Hopefully we can ask some more questions. I'm going to go and kind of jump into some of these that were submitted. So starting with the unemployment benefits first. And some of these were submitted from folks who've gone through the process, and they had questions as they were going through it. So hopefully we can try and clarify for some other folks. So when employees are applying for benefits, I'm reading off my other screen, so I'm
Okay.
when employees are applying for other benefits, for these benefits, what exactly are they receiving? And is it just 4 weeks of benefits? I know that that number had been kind of floating out there. So can you just talk through what do the benefits look like right now?
So it would mirror, it typically goes on what your average week salary would have been. That doesn't take into account unless you've claimed every tip you ever made, it's probably not likely going to be an exact. And while they put out a date that looked like it was sunsetting in 4 weeks, this is something that we just don't know how long this is going to be. So it isn't anticipated that this was just for 4 weeks, and then regardless of the situation we're all in, it will go away. The idea, people were being hopeful when they set this up, and it would be great if in 4 weeks restaurants and bars could open back up. And if that's the case, then we hope people go back to work and they don't need unemployment insurance.
Yeah. So, I guess talking about that. So What is the process for employees who are temporarily laid off? Do they need to be checking in with their employers? Do they need to submit anything for it to get approved?
Right. So I know it's confusing. My daughter is in this very similar situation. And so if you are temporarily and you check the box temporary layoff, you are not required then because of the COVID, excuse, let's be clear,
Yeah.
um, COVID-19. So you are not required to be looking for work in the same manner as prior to the virus. The recommendation is that you do keep a log, you write it down somewhere what you did during this time should you be asked. And it could be updating your resume, maybe you take an online course while you're sitting at home, just whatever activities you're doing. It doesn't mean necessarily that you will be asked, but it could happen, so just write it down. But it's not the same as having to fill in the weekly work search requirements. I'm not certain though that the system isn't asking for that at the same time that I'm telling you this.
Right.
Those are programming issues that they're working on, and I'll be on a call after this to discuss that more to see where they're at with that. I know they're trying, to be quite honest, I really think people, just as we all were very hopeful that this was going to be so temporary that you would not need to completely change your tracking systems and your databases.
Yeah.
So, and when you change one thing in a system, for people who have programmed, it changes so many things down the line that if you haven't thought of those, it can completely break your system at a time when you have more traffic on it than ever before in its history.
Yeah. So what other kind of concessions are they making? Is the 1 week wait period been waived yet, or is that something that's in discussion?
It is definitely in discussion. It has not been waived. Part of that is just the system overload on top of what those considerations would have to be. I think people, even though there's been a waiting week, I think on the back end, they're going to feel like they were made whole, especially if the package comes through from the federal government. I think that's the concept behind that as well, that people will have missed a week.
Okay. Can people still receive, and if you know the answer to this one, if not, we'll make sure to carry this one over to our to our webinar on Wednesday. So someone was asking about if employees can still receive sick leave benefit if they opt for unemployment during those first 10 days prior to the family leave.
If you're still receiving benefits, that typically means you are still employed. Just so you need one or the other. And you could, if you're employed, if someone's wanting you to exhaust all benefits before claiming unemployment, that's a discussion between your employer.
Yeah. Okay. So,
just be smart about it.
Someone asked, there was nothing for me to mark that my layoff was due to COVID-19. If the government passes the aid checks, how will Oregon know that I'm one of those employees that was affected by this?
So I don't think that will inhibit anyone. The federal government will come out with who's qualified and how to qualify for that. And at that point in time, if there is something that through our state unemployment insurance, I don't know that they'll be the ones administering that. It could be Social Security we don't know who's going to administer those funds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So then we got a handful of questions, and I'm sure that there's a lot of employers in this boat right now, really trying to weigh the benefits and the disadvantages of laying folks off versus furloughing versus trying to keep them on and applying for other sort of funding relief. I kind of wanted to just kind of talk with you to see what some of your recommendations are in that way.
So if they can just reduce hours and take advantage of the work share program, I recommend that they take advantage of that. if because of the latest executive order around stay home, stay healthy, if they're not able to maintain the distancing that's required and to stay safe, and I mean, even if they didn't fall under one of those categories that were named, if they realize their business can't be conducted otherwise, they may just have to make that decision on their own then. I don't know it seemed like everything was covered, but there's always something that, people didn't think of.
Yeah.
But it really is an individualized decision in this case. And in that case, there's a number of different funds that are available. There's emergency small business loan programs that have popped up. Austin Ramirez with Lane County is a good contact for that program, and others that have been created. And then there's for those who can work from home, check out the layoff aversion program on our website as well.
So we had a couple of questions just pop in. If someone's paid sick leave through the new federal program runs out 80 days of pay. Oh, there's more questions coming up. I lost it. Sorry, one second. Runs out 80 days of pay. Would they be eligible for unemployment after that point, since it caps out at 80 hours? Sorry, 80 hours of pay. So once an employer uses that 80 hours of sick pay through the federal program that's rolling out, and then an employee is laid off, is that employee then, we imagine, eligible for unemployment?
They should be.
Okay.
Once they're laid off, if they have no more available pay, then they would be, I mean, even without that law, if you are not being paid in any way, then you are and you have been laid off, then you are eligible.
Good. So questions about furloughed versus laid off. So on the employee side, are furloughed employees able to apply for that unemployment, and did they mark temporary layoff when they're applying?
I think we're mixing terms. I mean, furlough is a temporary layoff.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of why people are being furloughed. And so then yes, they need to check the box temporarily laid off.
Okay. Yeah, an employer asks the difference really between furlough and being laid off completely. The way I understand it, furloughed, the employer's still providing benefits to those staff, and I'm assuming or guaranteeing them to be brought back on when it's over. That was a question that was asked.
So there are some employers who might be able to do that. Others would not be able to provide benefits if their employees are not in a paid status. So I don't know how that must be specific to specific types of businesses.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll circle that one around for Wednesday as well. Okay. Are there any programs for independent contractors or folks who are self-employed?
So unemployment insurance is looking at making the program available to independent contractors. So they should look at applying. I don't know where they're at with this at this time, but the conversations are happening. So it doesn't hurt to apply for benefits. You could be told no, but right now with things changing the way that they are and that there's some flexibility in place, you might as well give it a shot.
Yeah, the other recommendation I would have is folks who are set up with their own business, look into some of the small business disaster loans. So even if you are a single employer or a sole proprietor, you may still be eligible for some of those small business loans as well. So I would consider the SBA disaster loan, and we will send out links to everybody who registered here for some of these things that we've been talking about, and we'll make sure to get them posted on Facebook as well. But that is something that you should definitely look into as well. And we'll keep folks updated. That independent contractor or sole proprietor is a question that we've been getting a lot in the last few days. So as soon as we hear if the state has in fact opened the unemployment benefits to them as well, we'll definitely get the word out there for folks. Let's see. What is the turnaround time between applying for the work share program and your employees receiving benefits? What qualifies or disqualifies an employer from being eligible for work share?
So you need to go on the Oregon Employment Department's website. We'll provide that link because there's a whole question and answers series, and I don't want to misrepresent a whole other department. The changes have been made so rapidly that updates could have been made prior to us even getting on here. So really go back to that page, and Brittany, you have those links, right, that you can share.
Yeah, we can provide those. Do you know by chance what the turnaround time is for applications right now?
You should be within, I don't know about approval timing, but it's not been long from what I've heard. Someone should be in contact with you within 24 hours, and you can, and the Q&As are already on there. So your questions that you have are someone else has probably already asked, and they're right there.
Great. Let's see. So it looks like there was a follow-up to if the person is still awaiting test results, but our area is low on tests, what if they're not laid off? So I want to make sure I understand this question right. So if someone is out sick, they've taken a test, they're waiting on those test results. Still out per doctor's note and awaiting test results and burns through the 2 weeks. So if they've burned through their 2-week benefit given by the federal government while they're waiting for test results, then I assume, are they eligible for applying for unemployment?
Yeah, it sounds to me if they,
that's a tricky one.
well, they would fit under, now whether or not their employer still considers them being laid off, there's a question there that
Right.
There's some gray area.
Yeah.
If their employer is considering them laid off, then they would meet it under the COVID-19 UI. If for some reason their employer determines that they've abandoned work and is going to claim that they had to terminate them, which I would hope someone wouldn't do that, but I don't, not knowing what the situation is,
I'm gonna circle back around with you afterwards to make sure I get your question right, and then we'll follow up with it to make sure that we get that answered. Let's see. So from Jessica, an employee relayed she was having issues getting online, so she tried to call and the phones weren't getting through this morning. Are there additional resources if anyone is having a hard time, or other phone numbers they could try?
For unemployment insurance?
Yeah.
So I really understand the frustration, and all I can say is that you have to just be patient and stick with it. The system's crashing, it's not just an Oregon thing. There's a lookup through Social Security, which is national, and with all the national unemployment insurance claims, Social Security has been just completely overrun. And so once it goes down, everything goes down. And so as frustrating as this is, there are no other, there's a backlog of everything, and you just have to stick in there. I've heard that while it's taken a while, people are getting, like, within the day that you're trying, people are getting through. It's not like they're never getting through. It's just taking several attempts.
Yeah, my brother got laid off this last Monday night, and he was trying to apply on his phone, and we realized a couple of days in that was actually the issue. And when he tried to apply on a Surface or just like on a PC, he was actually able to get through. So I would recommend folks, if you are trying on your phone, to try on a different platform and see if maybe it was just a browser error, because we tried several times that way, and then we were able to finally get it to work whenever we tried a different browser. So just one random piece of advice that I found out.
Recommendation.
Yeah. So Jennings Group asked, does the 2 weeks of paid sick leave being taken intermittently, such as 1 week for being sick this month and 1 week for caring for children next month, does the 2 weeks of paid sick leave cover, or There's I think the question is missing kind of the meat there. Does the 2 weeks of paid sick leave being taken intermittently, is that okay? I'm guessing that's the question.
Well, there's probably going to be a lot of benefits experts looking at this and making recommendations. Typically, I could say yes, and then it depends on a calendar year or something.
Right.
So you need to check with your employer and your benefits experts, and they will be getting the interpretations from other experts that will be able to give advice on. It's probably does not have to be taken continuously, but where in the calendar year it has to be taken, I don't know.
Yeah. What will unemployment funds run out? If someone is held off, if an employer holds off for a couple weeks, they don't have to lay off just yet. And then 2 weeks in, they decide we're going to lay off. Is there fear that the funds will run out for those employees?
I imagine there are analysts looking at this just like there are people looking at, the rest, all the health data and what could change and what. Certainly, there's not an unlimited amount of money. There was reserves on hand, and the federal government, there's requests being made to the federal government to bring additional funds into the states. All 50 states are making these requests. So, right now, I think people are feeling confident that they can handle what's coming our way. A month from now, I don't know what that will look like.
Yeah. So unemployment benefits, do they still cover 65% of pay?
I know it's not the full amount of your pay, and it also depends on your weekly pay. So it's not, to my knowledge, 65%, I think, is a number that's thrown out so people can kind of have that number in their head. What specifically happens, each individual can be different based on your earnings and how you earn them. So
Okay.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, so it's not a flat rate across the board, but it isn't 100% in most cases.
Not in most cases. And I haven't heard of the 65% of wage. That sounds like a solid number that maybe someone's using as a place to get people to plan, but I haven't heard it put that way before.
Okay. So if employers are looking to try and avoid layoffs, we've talked about a couple different things, but I want to make sure that if there's any other ideas or, experiences that you've seen in the past that have worked, that we share them with folks. So we talked about the work share program. So for folks who jumped on later, if you are an employer who is trying to avoid laying staff off and you decide to cut back hours, as long as, am I right, 3 or more employees have their hours cut back, you as the employer can apply for this work share program, and the state will help backfill some of those wages that are cut back. Is that an accurate kind of explanation? Okay. So that's one option for employers looking at that. Obviously, small business loans. There's 2 loans right now that are eligible for folks to apply for through either the local or the federal government. There are also plenty of private loan options that are out there, and a lot of banks and private lenders are doing what they can to try and accommodate small business as well. Locally, we have a business emergency loan fund that's been put together. You can apply for that at communitylendingworks.com, and that's for folks with 20 or fewer employees as of the end of 2019. And then the Small Business Disaster Fund has been opened up for the state of Oregon. So if you looked at the beginning of last week, we were not qualified yet, but we have been qualified and all the information is online. So that's an option for small businesses as well to go on and apply for that disaster loan funding. Both of those loans can be used for operations. So it doesn't have to be some sort of infrastructure project or anything like that. It can be operation funding, bridge funding for you as you try to navigate the kind of unknown of how much time we're going to be taking off. It looks like the community lending fund was a really limited pool of money, and so it might have already been all tapped out, but I will say that they are working diligently to get more funds added into that. So if you have not applied already, I would still encourage you to apply, get on the waiting list, because as they're able to get more funds into it, you want to have your application already in there and ready to go. They are looking at private funders. They're looking at foundation grants that might be able to be driven towards that. Other jurisdictions contributing financially. The city of Eugene, city of Springfield, and Lane County were the original ones to put the funding into that. And so we knew it would be used up pretty quickly, but I would still encourage you to apply. So when and if funds do become available, you would be able to be considered for that. What else, Kristina, am I missing as far as options for employers to avoid laying off? You also talked about the loan or the layoff aversion grant you guys have.
Grant. It'll be, I mean, and it's a checks cut based on your expenses for companies 20 or less to adapt to a work from home type environment, up to 5,000. We also have what's called the Shine program, and they are revamping that program to consult with businesses that are facing and having all these questions and trying to figure out what they should do as far as laying off or adapting and what they could do to adapt to this new environment. And that they will be doing outreach to individual businesses and if someone wanted to contact them too, the Shine program information is available on our website as well. And Shane Johnson and Joe Marushek lead that program for us.
And Joe is actually going to be on our webinar on Friday talking about, he's a really well-known business advisor in town who has worked with companies for a while through the Shine program, trying to help them avoid layoffs and make operational changes in kind of the midst of crises just like this. So Joe's going to be on to talk a little bit more about some advice he has for businesses on how to navigate some of these things. So he'd be a good resource for the Shine questions as well.
Yep, that'll be great.
Yeah. So Casey Minnis on Facebook asks, if we laid off full-time employees and may be able to offer them part-time, will they still receive unemployment for the hours missed, or does it render them ineligible?
Casey, I still think you should check out the work share program, because I believe you can go back and forth then. If you're bringing them back for a portion of hours, then the work share would still keep them whole. And then if you had to lay them off again, then they don't have to go through another waiting week. That's what I've been told anyway. Okay. So check that out. It could help you be able to go back and forth. And I specifically asked that question because I've been asked that question from other companies. And that is what I was told. They could, go from work share to full layoff back to a partial, and work share would cover.
Okay. John Borofsky asks, if I've laid off my employees, will it jeopardize bailout compensation? So if they've already laid their staff off at this point, a lot of the restaurants did that early last week, and some of the federal stimulus hadn't come down yet. Will they be ineligible for that? And maybe we need to dig into that question a little bit more, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have enough information to know how to answer that.
Okay. Johnny, I'll put that question on my list to dig into and hopefully circle back around on our webinar on Wednesday. Melissa asks, do you know of any foundations or grants to help nonprofits? So I know that the small business disaster loan is available for nonprofits as well as for-profit entities. So the interest rates are slightly lower for nonprofits, but they are eligible there. There's a couple other grants that are, I think, growing as we speak at the state level that we can share those online as well, as far as when they kind of open up to nonprofits. I do know that there's opportunities there that are growing by the day, so we can share some more of those. I don't know, Kristina, if you have any other.
It's the Nonprofit Association of Oregon is tracking these as well.
Yes.
So
They're a
That's a great
great.
resource to go to.
Yeah, so I'll add that to a list to post online. Is it true that workshare only works for non-exempt employees?
I have never been told that, so I don't know. Maybe there isn't maybe there's not a way to adjust for exempt because of salaries. I have not heard that, but I'm not the a representative of the employment department either. So
Matt,
they're
let,
partners of ours.
Matt, let us look into that and we'll get back to you on that question. I think what we'll do is end up taking some of these that we don't have answers to, which we anticipated would be the case. We didn't know exactly what questions would be out there. So we'll take some of these back, we'll do some research, and then we'll commit to getting as many answers back to you as possible.
But I also, so Brittany, and I appreciate that as well as these links. So if you can provide those, I know we've sent these out. The information is changing pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So if you have access to the direct source, that's where I recommend going. So the Oregon Employment Department has the Workshare program. They're having conversations. Some of these things are in statute. Some of these things are having to be determined by either the governor or our current legislators. And as they make these changes, they're updating their website. So if you're going to go on an answer that we gave you today, something could change by tomorrow. And you really should be checking those sites and getting applications in. If you get an application in and things should change, then the determination on your application could also change.
Yeah. So we will do our best to make sure that you guys have the resources for those links and where you can find the information. And we're trying to stay as up to date on as possible. So as we get new information, we'll definitely share it out with everyone. But to Kristina's point, I highly recommend just apply anyways. And the way I see it is as you kind of work through and understand the program, it's better that you would have started the process than kind of waited to figure it out. So when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to some of these work-share programs, check out Lane Workforce's website. She mentioned the layoff aversion grant. So if you're trying to figure out how to accommodate your staff to work from home, they have small grants to help pay for the technology needs in order to do that. Other companies who might have small grant needs to kind of shift their business model in order to try to do what they can to stay alive during this time. That's a great resource for some of that, those small grants. Kristina, do you have any other thoughts or comments about, some of the stuff that you've seen happen through times like this? I don't know, you having lived through worked through the recession and seen businesses bounce back, is there any good advice that you have for folks?
Well, this is different than anything we've ever experienced. I've never seen changes and information come so quickly. Like I said, it's been good changes, things that we asked for, some more flexibility. We are still asking for things like the waiting week to be waived. There's some other things that we're pushing for flexibility. From everything we talked about today to trying to get the unhoused housed, and every aspect that you can think of as far as keeping a community safe and healthy, but able to pay their bills, and then having conversations around, well, what bills can be waived and how do we, work on those things. And, the governor did come out with waiving rental evictions. So, there's things that we're constantly seeing even more. And that's just one example. But information's constantly changing, and that didn't happen even in the Great Recession. We had programs that came our way. We were able to read, the bill or the new legislation or the new assistance program and apply it, learn it and apply it. You may learn something and then you find out that it's changed because something else has come in over the top of it, hopefully better. But it is an ever-changing environment. And so I just strongly recommend that while we're here and we're willing to, I would love to hear your questions and talk things through and see, if we can make sense of things together. But I also think people need to go to the source of the information and read it for yourselves. A lot of these questions that you have already been asked and answered by the experts, and then they've possibly already been updated as far as the answer. So this is just it's uncharted, and there's some of the questions that are being asked that no one even thought we'd have to explore.
Yeah.
It's uncharted territory.
I have a couple questions that came in while you were talking here. Can you collect unemployment if furloughed? Yes, we decided furlough is temporarily unemployed, and so you should just go ahead and apply for that. Someone is saying they haven't been able to get through to the Workshare program by phone or email. What's the best way to reach out to them? I assume just keep trying in one of those formats. I don't know if you have any advice on that one.
Yeah, I imagine they're just backlogged like everything else, where it's being promoted all over the state. So you just stick with it. I would say a laptop, not a phone, as Brittany was saying, if you're trying to connect to them, and just stick with it.
Yeah. Kristen asks, what if our employees will be on reduced hours, but the actual number of hours will be determined based on billable project time versus projected, or projected on a weekly basis? How do we apply for Workshare in that case? That might be a question.
Oh, that you only have projections. You don't have, that's definitely something to work out with the Workshare staff. I'm sure the team there has worked on a project like that before, even not in these types of circumstances. I'm sure they've had that situation.
Yeah. If we have someone on temporary layoff, can the employer still provide health insurance benefits if the employee is collecting unemployment? So I understand that to be sort of the furlough versus fully laid off situation.
Fully laid off.
Right. I have folks, I have friends who were furloughed and were able to collect benefits, or were still receiving health benefits.
So they're still attached to their employer, receiving benefits. I wonder if that's on the Q&As for the employers on the Oregon Employment Department page. Makes me want to look that up now that it's come up so much.
Let's see. We've had a few employees who are volunteering to forego a paycheck so others can keep getting paid. Is this legal? That's a great question.
You can, I mean, if you're not a union, people can volunteer to be laid off. And then you have to lay them off.
These are really great questions to follow up on too with the attorneys. Let's see. Kristen got her answer. Good. Do employees apply directly for Workshare to the employer on behalf? The employer does apply on behalf of the organization for the Workshare program.
Right. The employer applies, then there'll be instructions for how the employees receive their portion from UI, unemployment insurance.
Well, I have all these questions highlighted, and I'm going to save all these here. So I apologize if you did not get your question answered. We are going to circle back around, and I have a full staff of folks ready to dig in to try to find some of these answers. And like I said, we're going to bring on 2 workforce attorneys on Wednesday who are going to be able, even with just 2 more days, are going to have that much more information that they're going to be able to share than what Kristina and I had today. So I encourage you to circle back around and log into that. we are going to keep going with some of these webinars just to try and get as many questions answered for folks as possible. If you have suggestions of speakers or topics that you want covered, or just questions that you're like, I just need this answered, please reach out and let us know. On the Chamber website, on our webinar page, this will be recorded and placed up there. And we will also have a form for you to ask those questions and submit those ideas. We definitely want to be responsive to folks in this time. Right now, the plan is this Wednesday and this Friday to host these. If there are other issues that come up, we will throw some other webinars up here. So I really appreciate your time, Kristina. Thank you. I know this is a hard topic because things are changing by the second, it feels like. But I do appreciate you taking the time to try and answer some of these questions. And I know you'll help us try to find some answers if we don't have them.
Yeah, and if any of the questions you don't have answers to, you want to send them my way, I can send them up the chain to the employment department, and we can get some clarity around that. I think we're still fuzzy on the furlough layoff thing, and I hope people will go to the website. If the Q&A does not answer your question, then ask the question there so that you can get it answered with some clarity, because I respect that people are wanting to maintain benefits for their employees, and it seems like you should be able to do that, but whether or not, how that program works, I don't have the answers to that. And then Brittany, you and I can work on getting someone high up from the employment department on one of these webinars with you. That way, I will tell you, they're still going to refer people to go and look at those Q&As.
Yeah. Of course. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody for logging on. Let's see. Oh, there's people answering questions as we speak here. So Michelle Katie states, on the WorkShare application, you have to agree to continue to provide health insurance. So with WorkShare, that is the case.
Right.
No, thank you. Are there any special programs available for businesses in rural Lane County? So I would encourage, the local funds through Community Lending Works were split between the metro area and the rural area. So if you're a rural business, I would still go ahead and apply for the Community Lending Works grant, because that fund might still be available. I don't know for sure. But again, even if it's not, I'd encourage you, Russ, to go ahead and apply. And then hopefully as those funds become available, your application will be in the queue. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and we will see you all again on Wednesday at noon. You can sign up for that webinar on the Chamber's webpage. Thank you, Kristina. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to whoever looked up the Q&As on WorkShare.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a good one.